December 8th, 2021 at 7:08 p.m. All right. Roll call. We're all here. We have Mr. Lafreniere is also here. Hi, how are you? So the committee's
Great,
on.
thank you.
She's not.
And we have, I think the rest of the board is here, right? And we have both the central office, the full house. Great. Approval of the agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Ed and Gary?
Yep.
Thank you.
And approval of minutes? We did look at those earlier.
Second.
You have to abstain.
I have to abstain.
Yeah,
I did try.
She wasn't there either.
okay, second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. So Gary and,
So, Ed.
Marissa, that's 2 abstentions, Nikki and Gary on the
Yeah.
minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody on the public line? For this one? No. So, discussion next steps, year end 2021. 2020. Yeah.
We went through the partial soft close so that we've closed out all of the encumbrances except for the 2 lines that you see where we had additional invoices come in that were not earmarked originally. So we look to be approximately around 346,600 to give back to the town.
I have a question. So,
Really hard. I didn't want to say that.
so obviously we were, you know, we had some overspending in certain areas, which happens a lot in education. That's why boards of education can do budget transfers. What is do we have the budget transfers for it? Because
You know,
usually
at the
different
end
year-
of the year, you just kind of work it out, right, in terms of,
Pretty much just works out to the bottom line at the end of the year, because this shows you the building point for your next year's budget. If you're going over, you under budgeted. If you're going under, you over budgeted. So this helps build next year's budget. If you clean it up, you don't know where your problems were.
Go ahead.
Well, and I was actually questioning that just because what is the process? Like, when do we do a budget transfer? Because I thought when we went to this level, like the 5,100, I thought we could move underneath that within any of those.
All of the 100 lines, the 5,100
Yeah.
equal the total of the year-to-date expended. So yes, there are some that are over and some that are under, but the net effect for the entire line was over.
I guess my question is, without the board, I'm trying to figure out like the process, like without the board, yeah, like, because without the board approving the budget transfer, how are we able to spend that money?
Salaries you have to. And I don't think that there have been any budget transfers done in this district in quite some time.
That's exactly my question.
We
We
used to-
haven't
We used to
done
do them when I was first on the board.
Mhm.
We used to do budget transfers. All the time.
That's your exact prerogative. If that's something you need me to do, I can make that happen. But I have noticed that there weren't any done in the past, so I didn't bring any to you.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah, no,
definitely
it's
not
definitely
you.
not you at all.
It's not on you. We're just kind of talking, this is, you came after this.
And you
But-
came with a beautiful format.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
But you don't have budget transfers, doesn't that mean you're doing a better job of budgeting, or am I not understanding exactly?
If you don't make the budget transfers, then you did a great job
Right.
of budgeting.
So you're looking for more detail.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
just looking for like, okay, great, it all averaged out to where we, had extra money. But if that's not the case, I didn't think we allowed spending in these areas to go over what we had allocated.
believe a lot of the reasons that some of them went over is because you purchased things with the year-end funding. So I don't think that before all those purchases were made, these lines had been over.
Well, like
What
salary,
does
I
that
mean, if
mean?
you have a teacher leave mid-year and that teacher just say makes 40,000, gets replaced by a $60,000 person,
There's not much.
there's
you can do
nothing
about
we
it.
can do about that.
Right.
The question is, does the budget committee want the budget transfer forms every time it happens? Because a lot of cases, you're gonna be notified after the fact, because if they hire a person, they're not gonna not hire a person because of that. But the next time, a teacher could leave at 80,000 and you're replaced with a 40,000, so it's kind of fluid throughout the year.
Or with the intent to continue to delegate our authority to authorize budget transfers to the administration. I never liked doing line item transfers when I was in college and student government, and I don't think I would like it now, because 99% of the time, we're gonna approve them anyway, because people who run our school district are telling us they need this money for this thing, and it's important that they have it. 99% of the time, I'm gonna agree with them. I don't
But you're
personally,
aware of
I don't
them.
wanna see them. Yeah, I mean, we
You know,
get
then
told
you're
that things
aware,
happen
yeah.
after the fact, and I'm cool with that. I don't wanna vote on a bunch of budget transfers every monthly meeting. I think it's not worth it. The system is most of it.
I don't want to put on it either. I think if you're looking for quarterly review, I can understand the process, I think.
Or
you know,
year end.
Or year end, are you looking for more often to see
I'm
it?
looking to understand the process. I was under the impression just that we couldn't spend above what we budgeted for.
In total.
In total, or no, sorry, by those by the object series. I don't know what that
That
level
is the
that
object
is, right?
series,
General
absolutely.
number.
Yeah, right. Like I thought they could move with underneath that how they needed to. Forbes teacher, however that needed to move, but that,
Normally
we
that's
approved
true.
that budget.
Normally that's true, but this is what it ended up with.
Yeah.
Well, the bad side to that though is if you get just say you get a special ed student that comes in, right? And that child costs $280,000 that we didn't know about. Doing it in that methodology, you would have to cut $280,000 somewhere else in the budget, which would mean someone else who had money budgeted will go with that.
You would-
Where
Provided the
overall, you
excess
would still
cost.
have the same amount of money in your budget and you may have extras. So that's why I think the theory was, we watch it closely every month, we look, we see if we need to make adjustments. But if you're doing actual transfers, then you're taking away something from someone else to pay for that.
Wouldn't we need to do, wouldn't we have to do that though? Take away to fund where we're over so that we're managing to that total? Like, I get these past 2 years have been completely different and we've had surpluses. But prior to that, I mean, we were running really tight where we had to freeze the budget every, January or February time period. So I would think if we are over, to your point, we would need to cut somewhere so that we're not overspending.
But we may be under somewhere else, like a contracted service that came in at less than what we had anticipated it was coming in.
We'd be micromanaging
Because
the process.
There's an
Or
ebb
you-
and flow
This
to
is what we're
the,
responsible
to the,
for.
but
so-
there's an ebb and flow to
Yeah.
the year. And you'll, like Fiona's saying, it might be sped or it might be a salary, like Lynn is saying. So that happens throughout the year, or then you have to have a certain expense because it's an emergency, the truck broke down or whatever it is. So then as you go and you get closer to the end of the year, you're really saying, okay, where were we over, where were we under, and where can we pay for that expense? Because you're monitoring, your report that I think is really helpful is, and we didn't use this a lot before, but I don't know, I like this report, maybe I'm geeky, I don't know, I like the little lines. And so it just says how much is in that account and then how it's going down throughout the year. So that's where you can see, oh, okay, we spent more or we spent less. And you can see how it goes down, and Lynn will give this to you every single month so that you can see it. And you can actually look at the line items. And then you can say, okay, so what happened here? Because then it actually goes within all of the salary sections and all of the insurance sections, all of the sped sections. So it breaks it down for you so you can see what's happening within in those different accounts from month to month. Right, so you are checking in.
Yeah, so if you get to November and you see that one of the accounts is getting to zero, then the question has to be, how are we gonna cover this, or where is it going? You can ask, I didn't understand that, but just, I thought about that as we walked through, because this easy
Yeah,
report.
we usually focus on those other
Right.
recap
So I
sheets.
think you would be
So,
able to see. it.
so I wonder when we stopped receiving budget transfers, because we had a form that the board used to receive, and I don't recall seeing one for a couple of years. So I wonder, I don't remember if there was a certain dollar threshold, like transfers above a certain amount that came to us, because it wasn't like every single little
No.
thing. But it also wasn't the, you have to hire somebody at 60 when you had budgeted for 40, because that was the same line item. It was, we
Yeah.
need to go,
Yeah.
buy a new piano, and we're gonna have to take that out of the cafeteria or something like that. It was things like that, like
Right.
bigger
If you-
things.
If you look at the numbers, that's why I like using the series. For me, I don't like to have any one of these go over in total. So that's what I'm going to be working forward in this new year, to make sure that each one of these line items is as close to zero as possible without going over. Because that's the way you budgeted it for salaries and benefits and professional services and purchase property services, and I'm gonna do my best to keep it within the budget that you budgeted.
And so,
Hold on, Jason,
Yeah.
had his hand up. Go ahead, Jason.
So to Jess's point, there were a lot of budget transfers that always took place in the past for the number of years that I've been coming to meetings at the end to kind of balance out each of the line items to zero. But Lynn, from what I'm hearing you saying is by doing that, you're actually putting the budget committee at a disadvantage for coming up with a budget for next year. Leaving these where you see the overages and unders, we can say, okay, we've over budgeted. And that's been something that I've brought up in the past is, what are we doing with those line items where we've been over budgeted from the past, and are we cutting those, for the current? And so you're saying that this is going to help you to make a more streamlined and more accurate budget in the future based on our spending currently.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
The only question I would have about that is, like in the past, we've had situations where we had to freeze the budget. So it wasn't that those departments didn't need that money. We had budgeted that money, but then they weren't allowed to spend that money. So then you get to the end and it looks like, oh, they had $50,000 left over. Well, they were told they couldn't spend it because we froze the budget.
75%.
Yeah, so that would be the only, that would be my question mark
So-
about doing it that way.
In March.
Yeah.
We get together and we look at where we stand, and then we let people do more purchasing. If there's funds available, we let them do more purchasing, so that you don't wait till year end to do it, because if you wait till year end to do it, you may find that you can't get it in time.
So Lynn and I have talked about what you're saying, because we have started the year only spending 75%, or we've had to freeze in December or January. So we want to really look at this, monitor it, not that that wasn't done in the past, just spend in a different way so that we are using the money that we have instead of saying, oh, okay, it's June, go ahead, Christmas, yeah. And so we've done some planning toward the end of the year, but I think if we can do that even earlier, where we really are able to say to principals, go ahead, it's March, it's, we're closer to the end of the
Buy the
year.
things you've
And
run out of.
right,
Yeah.
so you're really looking at what obviously you're starting with the things you absolutely need and you need for the fall and you need for the first semester. And then we may be looking in January or in December, and you're looking at that second semester and saying, you know what, we're out of XYZ. Or with the trimesters, we're going to be out of whatever it is in March, because we've really got a plan for our middle schools and our elementary schools. So I think we're going to be doing more of that.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty content with that. Like I'm content with just having it put in front of me. This is where we're at. I think where we are as a district right now and the people who are in place, I think you guys have a good sense of when asking the board to make a decision is important versus letting us know that you've done something. I think we as a board have a good sense for what's going on in the administrative building and where the money's going. We see it every month. I don't think we need necessarily to go over to having budget transfer forms come in front of us for approval. I think as long as we know, as long as we know what's going on, I think I'm okay with that. Ultimately, what's happened in the last couple of years has generally worked for us. Maybe that's because we had lots of federal money to spend, but I think we've been in a good place budget-wise. I don't feel like anything egregious has been transferred from one place to another. And I think that the less we make administrators come to us on our schedule to ask us for permission to do things, the better. And I don't think we need to really be voting on budget transfers as long as we know they happen. That's where I'm at.
Well,
Seem to remember a lot of it is more micromanagement.
I do though.
this was,
So there was a conscious decision
Yeah.
to stop?
Yes, I believe there was.
I think part of the decision was because, so the only thing you can cut when you're doing budget transfers every month is consumables, right? So what happens is John Doe comes into district. Are we gonna watch our budget monthly or are we gonna shut the faucet off to everybody, meaning library? You can't buy any books, you can't buy any of this. So what happens is the things that are needed in the building never get bought because you're constantly moving the money that they got to buy books and stuff over. When, I don't want to say we've rouletted it, but we've watched this budget so closely every month that I personally am never going to put the board in a position where you're going to be personally liable for an overage, and none of us are going to do that. So we're responsible for the whole budget and making sure we can make it work. But I think this is a tough year to look at because when we developed this budget, COVID didn't exist. So, because we developed this before we got shut down the first time for last year. So,
Yeah.
so what we needed, we didn't know what we needed when we prepared this budget. So I think this is not an accurate reflection of what a regular year would look like.
This one wasn't either,
Right,
so it's.
so it's tough.
Doing the budget transfer with more taxing to the business. So do the transfer, bring it to the subcommittee. The subcommittee move it to the full board, then the full board approve or not approve. But this way, now we get a report every month on anything that stands out, so it's less, not adding work, because everybody's on the same page.
And I think there was a time, just to be honest, where we had business managers that we weren't, that
Right.
weren't strong. Like
Yeah.
Ed came in and, really cleaned house and stabilized things. And Lynn is more than capable to take the reins and to move forward. And I do think that where we are at with SPED is a much better place as well. Granted, you could get a student who has a multiplicity of needs. However, I think that Laura's really been watching her spending as well and really monitoring that and doing a great job, so.
Oh, thank you for add in that position,
Right.
has educated us more on the budget, and we've been able to get a better handle.
Right.
And I'll say that publicly, prior to, well, when I was on the board, I'm not gonna say, since I've been on the board, it didn't happen. So I don't know, but people have this perception, probably because someone like Ed wasn't here, that the superintendents, the board of ed was taking money and hiding it in some pocket. How many people told me that?
I know.
All the time, and, and it's just public perception and years of bad headlines. Have you seen? Oh. So I agree, I kind of agree with you. I would say if anything is an issue though, if it's brought up, at least we have a question about it, that at least can be discussed.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure I was clear
Not
on what
every
our
issue,
role was.
But anything out of
Kept
the
scanning.
ordinary does
Right.
get brought up at the monthly budget.
right,
Yeah.
Yeah. Right,
The
yeah, I'm
final
not saying
authority
that we
rests
need
with the
to, I
board.
just wasn't sure on what.
So if we ever felt like things were going horribly wrong, we could say now you have to bring every budget transfer. I don't anticipate that happening, but the ultimate ability to do that does rest with the board still.
And Lynn, Ed Ed would move fast with these things. Just be patient with some of us with questions, because Ed, I've seen how you explain and when you interviewed, I understood that you know, take a different approach.
But even down below, she has an explanation
Correct.
for
Right.
each item,
Right.
which I think is really helpful
Yeah.
for me.
I figured this isn't something that you look at every day, so if I can make it easier for you,
Right.
it makes it easier for everyone.
No, it's better, yeah.
Yeah. But the boards of ed do have the leeway because of, like Fiona said, the special ed cost of a kid moving in, an emergency fix at a school. There's lots of things that may have to get done that weren't budgeted for immediately because we have kids that are building. So that's why we're allowed to use other monies from other accounts to fix something or whatever the case may be.
Can I ask a question? I know we don't get the excess cost funds here, but if we had 10 kids move in districts that had extreme needs, would they fund it?
No, we have to ask for the
We
money
would
at
ask
the
for
end
it.
of
We
the
have to go
year.
and ask for
We
it?
would ask for it.
Okay,
But
because I've never worked
Some
anywhere that
districts
didn't
it's
get the
automatic,
excess
but
cost
it's not
funds.
Well,
here.
that can be discussed in the future.
Yeah, right. But with the,
Serious.
yeah, but I mean, with an explanation, I don't see why they want. I mean, it would have to, you have to.
They have to fund it.
They have to fund it, so it's just
Okay.
one of those.
I didn't know if they waited until the end of the year for that, or if it was something that they would fund immediately.
Well, if we needed it, they would have to, right?
Okay.
I mean,
We have to
yeah, we would have
ask.
to ask.
Okay.
If we needed the
Thank
money and
you.
we
I
had
just
to,
needed clarification on that.
that's,
When you were in East Haven, how did you handle that?
The excess funds came to us.
How did you get that to happen?
The state sent the money to us. I had the state sending all the grant money to us. I just asked,
I remember you saying that, that's why I'm asking it here.
yeah, I just asked the state to have them send it to our bank account, because we had our own bank account. We didn't share it with the town.
You going to investigate that for us, or
If that's what
if
you
your
wish.
boss tells you to do that?
If that's what you wish.
After the election. But it's worth looking into.
I know this is really tiny, but I was looking at the overage in the tuition reimbursement. And I'm surprised that it was budgeted for $10,000 because in the teacher's contract, it's budgeted for half of bachelor step 1, which is at like, I wrote it down, 22, right now for this year.
Oh, you're in this year?
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess.
$22,264.50. Yeah,
No, what are you looking at?
no, I was looking at this,
5250.
no, I was looking at last year's budget.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's, sorry, it's,
Yeah, 5250.
5250.
yeah, is that what it is?
Yeah. Right now, we're at
Yeah,
$30,000.
5250. Yeah, so, right, so it's over, but it's maxed out at 50% of the, of bachelor step 1 in the teacher's contract. And that's what should be budgeted, and we should really be spending more than that. And I understand that it's a, it's a small item, but I don't know why the 10,000 was in there, first of all. And I don't know why the actual number the number from the contract should have been in there. I mean, it's definitive.
It's 25 for next year, and it's saying anticipated expense at 30. So it's budgeted better, but still not where it should be. at 30.
Right, and it should be, it says in the contract that the Board of Ed will pay up to 50% of what a bachelor's step 1 teacher would make. That would be the total reimbursement for tuition reimbursement.
How does that get paid to them? I'm sorry, I don't know. Does that come through accounts payable? Is it?
I don't
It
know.
goes
Reimbursement?
through HR. We should have Kim share.
Kim's there.
Yep.
So it's due by May 15th of every year. So we collect that in HR and we review the transcripts to make sure that it meets the criteria for the contract. And then Lisa Schimmels puts it all together and then would hand it off to Lynn to do the financial component of it. And if we go over the budget, then, we equitably reduce everybody, because I think the language in the contract that says if we go over, then we stay on that budget. So we tell everybody that you get $500 per class unless we go over our budget. But we've been like almost right on the money these last few years.
Wouldn't our budget though be based on the employees we had at that time?
Yeah, whoever.
The budget is based on what what the budget should be based on what Armand just said. The language is what he just said. It's funny, I was just reading that language today.
Yeah.
It's based on the bachelor's step 1 of the contract. That's what the budget should be based on.
It was only 10,000 for some reason. It must have been one of the lines that got cut to balance the budget. That's on the outside looking in.
He said that
But it
to
shouldn't be
Lynn.
because
Right here.
it was more.
We know it's over.
Send it down to
Big
Lynn.
one.
But that's a,
It's over. Article 35 at the top there. It's pretty clear on what. I know it's a small part of the budget, but it's one of those, I don't know why we're going over it.
And then in answer to Lynn's question, it gets paid out in the last paycheck of the year in June.
Okay.
So it gets paid through payroll. Kathy processes that. But it's always in the last payroll in June because we wait to make sure we get it all and that we have everybody and we know what the total amount is.
So we did go over last year then.
Yeah, it went over by $20,000.
I think Jesus.
Yes, Jason, go ahead.
And that amount changes every year based on the increases to salary, correct?
Correct, but it doesn't change that much. Because
The salaries were frozen. VA step 1 doesn't change for the life of the contract. Does it?
I don't know. the contract is there, but I'm
Well,
just saying, I know what it is.
each year, step 1 is slightly higher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right, but I'm looking at,
I thought they were the
I'm
same.
looking at the 21, 22.
Next 2 years, they're the same.
Well,
Yeah.
right, okay, that's right, because not every year do we get the percentage increase. We may get a step, we may move up a step, but the steps don't necessarily increase each year.
Right.
That's right. Sorry, Kim.
So it doesn't change very much. It's just something that I noticed. We went over $20,000 in small part of the budget, but
It
I don't
was,
know why we did it. If it's contract language,
it was definitely under budgeted.
it should be in there. Yeah, this is what we did.
And I estimated it higher because I assumed that we were gonna follow the same trend. That's why I had it.
Well,
at-
I know why you did,
30.
because you didn't know. I get that. But
I'll
I'm
kick
just
that
saying
back
for
at
future
What
reference.
should it have been, Armand?
Well, this coming year would have been 22,000.
Right.
We have 25.
Yeah,
I
well, it's in
have
for
it.
25.
Yeah, it would have been, so this coming year should be $22,264.50.
The fact that we paid 30,000, sorry. No, we have 25 in there.
Right, and it's budgeted over, but really we should only be budgeting exactly $22,264. It's a pretty exact amount. Go ahead.
So how did we
Language they're referring to.
spend last year the 30,000?
I don't know, that's my question, that's why it flagged it, and then I remember contract language, and I found it, and that's where I.
It's only 10.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm
Yes,
thinking
you
if
said.
your number's only supposed to be 22,000, we should have never spent 30.
Right, which I never spent 30, and, yeah,
So, okay, so what would it have been for last year,
less, it would have probably been around 21,000.
We had more
Okay.
teachers last year than.
It's still
I had like more
50% of
It's
the
It's just
VA
50%
step 1.
of step 1.
50 more teachers
Yeah.
last year than this
So-
year, we paid out more.
No,
No,
it's just saying
no, no.
50% of step 1, it's still with that.
Yeah.
fixed number.
So that number should be fixed always based on the teacher's contract.
Yeah.
And when the teacher's contract is in negotiations, you would just assume that it would stay the same for that year.
Yeah, no, you were right, too.
Right. If that number goes up, then, if that step one bachelor's goes up, then whatever that percentage it goes up by, then that's what it increases by. That's the only time it increases. So that's a known number that we should know.
I will make it so.
So we should know that too. So we knew we had 10,000 budgeted all year, so. it's up
I
to
agree.
us
Well,
also
yeah.
to know that.
I think this format, the way the information's provided in these two formats are really gonna help us.
Yeah,
This-
it's
If you can see my smile through my mask,
easy-
it's huge. It's
it's a
so
lot
easy.
easier to pick up
Really.
things. Yeah.
And it's every single account, which is incredibly helpful. So thank you so much for putting these together.
No problem. It's easier to understand.
It is. Agreed.
It's easier for me to understand.
That's good. We need you to understand it the most.
These are difficult to read, the ones that you might have gotten in the past.
Any more questions on that?
We didn't go over our legal fees. That's amazing. Everyone else is saying that was a budget blower last year. We didn't go over.
My old district was 250,000
Over, right?
Yeah.
Already.
Because we sat through all those horrible calls rather than getting.
Any more questions on the 2021 budget?
Donations.
It's actually,
That's-
So-
I know it's
so-
not now.
It's COVID,
COVID.
can't
expenses.
switch it in New World, is the problem.
so we use that line item to
That's-
keep all the
that's-
COVID
that's-
expenses.
So far, we've only got $750 in the new year.
Good. Monthly financials.
So I'm estimating at the current levels that we're spending, we should have approximately 305,000 left in the new year. Unless any unforeseen huge things happen, even with the purchase of a truck, we could probably pay for that out of this budget.
Good idea.
Excellent.
Any questions?
Yeah, hopefully we'll have a, knock on wood, we'll have a good, safe year.
That includes like the cost of like the new students, expenses for all the new students.
They seem to have been buying everything that's needed, and we're still in a good place. Hopefully that there's no bad things that happen, but it looks very good. It's a very healthy looking budget.
Thank you. Any other questions on monthly financials? It's early in the year, so you know this stuff. Increased enrollment.
So increased enrollment, we knew that last year was the anomaly, not the norm. So what you have in front of you is 2019, 2020, then 2021, giving you that comparison. And the numbers at the bottom for 2019, that totals 3,722 students at the very bottom. And then 2020 is 3,572 students. And then just to clarify, they had 32 students pending in their enrollment just over the last couple of days. So for the middle school, it's not 11,012 students. It's actually, sorry, not 1,012 students. It's 1,044 students. So when you look at your total at the bottom, we have 3,811 students. So,
Do you remember
So you
when we
could
budgeted,
see,
or like when we did all our math, how many students, what enrollment we counted for?
we were guesstimating, so the increase, if you look at last year's middle school enrollment and you look at last year's high school enrollment, that's what we were budgeting for. So we're over, obviously, which is great because we have more students, but it's also difficult because we have more students. So as Lynn said, we've been able to keep up with the supply, the demand. In terms of that, some of the materials at the high school, we've been able to take out of things like Perkins Grant or ESSER funds and things like that, so that we still have some of our items covered. Some of the classes were if they had smaller sizes, they added to those classes. But they're, the high school is saying those classes, especially with our electives, are pretty maxed out, as are our regular classes. Middle school, same thing. Those numbers are running at about 23, 24, 25. Some of them are at that 25.
Does it mean you build a bigger high school?
Well, we are going to, yes,
I was gonna
well,
ask that
we're
question.
gonna be talking, and certainly this is kind of related here, so I guess we could say it.
Yeah.
No, but we are gonna talk with the state. We meet again with them on the 22nd. It's not necessarily about that, but we will be sharing our enrollment data, because obviously the numbers are growing. And in our, if you look at Forbes enrollment, they are larger as well. They're probably going to end up closer to that 350 because they've gotten some other enrollments. Southwest has stayed basically the same, but that 350 is a lot at Forbes. So
Yeah, it is a lot.
yeah, so the Torrington may inch up a little bit more. Vogel, where we saw some influx over the last 2 weeks right before school started, but it hasn't pushed it up to that 2019 number. So we're monitoring it closely and just trying to make sure that we're meeting everyone's needs. We're keeping those class sizes up to where we would need them contractually. And we're going from there.
Yeah. And then there was 32 pending registration on this expected.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, in that
Yeah.
middle school, that's how we ended up with the 1,044. Yep.
That was the middle school number. Go ahead, Jason.
I'm just wondering where we're at before we have to start hiring more staff due to contractual numbers. I know that there's a 4th history teacher being hired at the middle school, correct? Due to a number there. So I'm just wondering where we're at in regards to those contract numbers, because I'm seeing classes of 27, 28, 29.
Okay, you shouldn't see classes of 28, 20, anything over the 25, because I've worked out the schedule with Brian Scott. I know that originally, right before school, they had classes of even 30. And then we were saying, okay, we got, wait, we've got to rework. And so we did rework those classes. And so then that's been a huge help. For our electives, both at the high school and at the middle school, we have asked teachers to teach a 6th class. And so then that's a way for us to save money. Really, at the middle school, that's the only place where we've had to hire. We posted for a social studies teacher. We may need to add at the semester, another tech teacher, but we'll see. And that would be at the high school. So those would be additions, but we'll monitor the students, make sure that our numbers truly are, okay, bodies in the seat, who do we have? Make sure that we have very clear numbers before we're adding any other folks. For the middle school social studies, we did need to add. Thank you for reminding me, Jason.
Okay.
What are the numbers like at the elementary schools? And I mean, that's, I'm looking at
Yep,
20 more first graders at both Torrington and Forbes, you know, it looks, I mean, Torrington and Vogel.
yeah.
So are they adding sections of?
Not
That's good.
yet. We
Okay.
really had low numbers
Okay.
there, so we're doing very well. So they're running 20, 21 at the K3, but then at the 4 or 5, they're running higher. They're running at 22, 23, especially at Forbes. I think he said there were a couple of 24s,
Yeah, I think I remember-
particularly in the 4th
I think I
grade.
remember you tried to keep the real low grades at lower numbers because of the high expectation of the K1 increase in numbers.
Sure.
So it seemed to help.
It does seem to help to have it at the 2021, but we are also finding that there's an adjustment for these little kiddies because they haven't been in school. And so an adjustment to learning how to stand in line and take your turn and share and all of those things, especially for kindergarten and first grade. So Laura is shifting our behaviorists for right now down to the younger levels to make sure that we have some time and some resources and some guidance for those students coming in, just for these first few weeks, so that they kind of get things settled, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, no, just real quick, so I have us up for, up 89, based on the numbers that are here, plus the 30 something or 14, and then.
32.
Yeah, 32.
Right.
So over 2019, I mean,
Yep, yes.
so you said a few of the other schools might tick up a little bit more. Do you have like a sense of kind of how many, or at least when they might level out? Like when do they usually level out?
Yeah, so in this first month, I know that sounds like a long period of time, but it really does take that month to kind of get everything settled in. And then we still have an influx up till that October 1, and certainly throughout the year. But that's why the state does an October 1 collection, because we should be pretty stabilized. I think that last week in September. But I'd like to be able to say, okay, October 1, I'll bring that back next month, and you'll really be able to see firm numbers.
I think a lot of people waited until the last minute because they were
Yeah.
still undecided about what they were comfortable with.
And maybe they'll really still do remote. Maybe if we wait long
Exactly.
enough,
Yeah.
because people were still asking up to the last day before school started.
Yeah.
No, really, we really aren't.
We've been still putting in residency all week.
Two quick little things, but talked about teachers taking a sixth
Yeah.
and saving some money, but can we, rather than having gone and hired too many extra teachers or more than we need,
Right,
can we pay it? Are we paying them for that, or can we pay them?
yes, we are
Okay.
paying them for
So
that.
it's a good, yeah, okay.
And because to be honest,
'Cause you said we'd
everybody's
save money, but you
looking,
meant
well, it's to
saving money,
save
not hiring
money,
somebody.
but it's also because there aren't teachers out there.
Yeah.
No, I
And so
think
that's
great.
the
Yeah, I think that's
difficulty,
great.
and our teachers have said, okay, they'll volunteer, they'll do it, but obviously they're getting paid for their time served.
And then kids coming in with IEPs, I know Laura's, I read Laura's spreadsheet, but are the new kids that came in, has it been mostly non-IEPs or is it?
I'd have
We
to,
don't
I
have-
don't want
okay,
to say,
yeah.
yeah,
I'll ask at the next meeting.
I'd have her do the report next time. So she definitely keeps a
Oh, I know, it's great.
tight grasp on that, yeah.
Two things. One, how do you think, like, if you had to explain, because we dropped 150 kids between 2019 and 2020, and then we're up to 39 between 2020 and 2021.
Sure.
What do you think explains those trends, especially like the big influx this year?
Sure, so we had the drop because of COVID and people did whatever they were gonna do, homeschooling and all of that other crazy. I think there were a lot of people who moved into town and basically they did remote and they did remote to New York or wherever else they were doing. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I guess I need to register in town because there isn't that option anymore. And so now I can't remote. And we have had an influx in terms of folks just moving in and they have kids. And I think that trend is going to continue. I think during COVID, the whole thing about living in a city wasn't as glamorous anymore and people really wanted to move to towns. And I think Torrington is up and coming. I really believe that. And I think some of the folks really want to be a part of this new middle school, high school, and be in a town where their kids are going to benefit from that.
So the kids that, because the 2019 number was taken in October, so that was prior to COVID, right? That those would have been people that pulled their kids at the end of that year.
Mhm.
That's what's reflected in the 2020. And then the 239 is some of those people coming back, plus new people moving to town.
I think that's the combination. I think that the folks where you see 2019 to the 2020 is, I'm afraid, I just want to homeschool, I'm not sure.
Will we get homeschool numbers? Like, I'd be interested in homeschool and like how many kids we have going.
For the
parochial.
2021 school year,
Yeah, like in October after
Sure.
everything's.
once we
finalized.
figure out, yep,
And-
everything is gone.
And then
Yeah.
my second question, which you just said this, and so it just kind of, I was curious now, you said we may need an additional tech teacher at the high school?
Only in the second semester, but Andrew Marchand, who's doing the master schedule this year, is really monitoring that. And then we're trying to figure out whether that's an ad or not. It just depends on how it fleshes out.
Is that because like these new students are really interested in technical classes?
No, it's just because we're figuring, okay, we may need that particular area because I think that's where the requests were. And you have student requests in what students fill out for us. So I think it's student interest. I think if we are gonna grow or add a teacher, since that's where we really are moving in terms of our pathways and growing that, we wanna make sure that we're adding a teacher to something that we're really building on.
Are we looking at the sizes of our sections of our regular like classes that kids have to take? Is that, I feel like that would be probably where it would get concentrated versus classes that are electives.
We're trying to
Or is it-
monitor the master schedule, so wherever the needs are, and where they're spilling over, that's what we're gonna do.
I mean, I think it's great to add more tech. I'm just, that it would just didn't seem like
Yeah.
I would have expected to hear you say, so that's why I was curious.
But I think for those folks, I think at the middle school, we've got more of the additions in terms of content area.
Mhm.
And at the high school, I know that they have said repeatedly their electives are just really, really full. And it's hard with electives because certain rooms can only take 16 students and some can take that 24, 25. So you've got more options.
Thank you.
But we will continue to check in with
Jason
them.
and Fiona. You all set, Jason?
I just have a couple of questions because and part of it was kind of what Jess said too, because I think some people homeschooled due to the pandemic. And I think they're probably
Sure.
still homeschooled due to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to know like how many we possibly will be getting back post-pandemic.
So I can just tell you, because I just looked at this the other day. So last week, and I looked at the numbers, we ended last year with 93 students being homeschooled last year. And currently, I think I signed a couple more last week, but when I last looked at the numbers, we were at 24 for this year.
Okay, so most of them have come back.
Yes, and we've traditionally run around 24 anyway, you know, pre-COVID for a variety of reasons.
Okay, so those
families
people have
choose.
come back. Now, what about people that have transferred, and I'm just gonna use Torrington Christian Academy because I've heard a lot of people are going there because they're not requiring masks.
Yeah, I don't have that number.
So I think when looking at I'm really worried about the middle school, high school, so I wanna make sure that we're not leaving kids aside.
Yeah,
You
they'll
know.
be back. I mean, I know 3 people that won't there because of masks.
I think
But
it-
they're not gonna-
Right, it'd just be interesting to know what those numbers are, and if we know if that's why they went there.
The parochial schools really expanded too.
Yeah.
St. John Paul, they're way up.
So
Here, where did you say that?
parochial school
No,
enrollment's
yeah,
up too.
their numbers are way
Yeah,
up
they're
at
up
St.
too.
John Paul this year.
And then my third component, not to beat a dead horse, but I'm greatly concerned about the 2 housing projects. And the number of students that we could potentially be getting from those. And I'm not sure because they weren't in any of our enrollment projections because they were off the radar at the time. One of them we didn't even know about till a couple of weeks ago. So I don't know if it would behoove us to have someone look at an enrollment projection for those 2 complexes based on, like, to pay someone to do an enrollment projection for those based on like size complexes. And this is just for what you guys think, but you know, is it 100 kids? Is it 200? Is it 300?
Not even that many people.
Wow.
215.
It's gonna be like a teacher's.
No, I don't think so. Because if you look at, so this new one is much larger than. So I don't know if we want to guess on that, I guess is my point, because we're building a building and what I certainly don't want to do is build a building that's not big enough to fit all these people. And I'm wondering if everyone can guess and we can compare it to other types of, you know, I mean, I went to the point of looking at 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, how many kids? But I'm not even sure if I'm doing a correct
find out
mental
what the
analysis.
financing is, find out what the average student is. Financing is the CHFA funding federally granted that requires a certain percentage of the income, 80% max, or up to you can't exceed 80% of the income locally. That's what this financing is for. So we should hire somebody to investigate the financing, the average number of students you'll find in these places. It's pretty simple. The financing is direct and distinct for 80% or less of the local household income or per capita. I think it's household income, but it is targeted toward households and it is targeted toward income. That's what the financing only allows for. Nothing else. And then of course they tax credit it.
I imagine somebody somewhere has published a study about the amount of people, with the amount of children per unit for an
Correct.
apartment building.
Yes.
Because people
Well,
with
I've seen 'em,
families
yeah.
generally live in apartment buildings at a lower rate than they would live in detached housing.
Right.
And that's why I don't think it would be a big deal. I can look, I'm positive somebody has published something in some.
Because it's not the case in the one in New Britain. They ended up with a lot more kids, so
In
I just
larger,
really don't
denser
want to
cities,
guess.
It's a little bit different, but generally speaking, people with children prefer to live in detached housing if they can. I'll find something.
Well, I guess that's what I want to find out from the board. Do we want to consider this if we're going to the state? Do we not want to consider it? Are we not worried about it?
I think asking them to consider that there's significant new housing being added to the city stock is worth it. And if they say no, they say no. But, Torrington hasn't really built very much housing in the last decade, which I'm pretty sure is what our last enrollment study showed, which is why they projected a decline in enrollment. So if housing units are being added, we know that would show an increase in a slight one, but an increase in projected enrollment. And if the state would be willing to consider that in relation to the construction of the new building, then it's worth it because it means we'll get more money for more square feet. And even if we have to shell out for another enrollment study to prove it, I would say it's worth it.
It'll be at least 1 to 1.5. Both of those. It'll be at least 1 to 1.5. Especially this financing. I lived in one in Bristol. It's the same financing. It's the same things. And there's about.
You're gonna disagree.
No, I know, I know that, but above and beyond that, we should look into the other properties ourselves and not. I know you said that, but not everybody understands it.
So the building and specs that we just approved last time had a slight uptick in the enrollment, right? So there was slight uptick using, I guess, the NASDAQ from January 2021. So I know we're talking about these specific projects, but we're also, as Sue just mentioned, seeing an influx of people moving from the city into, kind of outside of the city. How is that being accounted?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. is Should we do an actual enrollment projection to account for all?
Another
But what's the
Another
NASDAQ
one.
What's the NASDAQ that was
We
done in
paid for that.
January?
We paid for that. So when they originally did the NASDAQ, part of the issue with their study, which we found when we reviewed it, is they didn't account for multifamily houses. They counted them as a single family unit. So we had them relook at that. But now we've got lots of other variables that we didn't have then.
Well, they're no longer theoretical.
Right.
Like, they're actually breaking ground on
Right.
these other things. And there's new build houses too in Torrington, I think for the first time in a while too,
Right.
and larger houses that typically would house families. So.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think we
Mike,
should look
if
at
we
it.
get too far in this process, we're not turning back, and that's what, it's kind of like, if we have all this information at our tip, it may be worth our while to pay for another enrollment projection to more accurately reflect. Because the other concern I had, and I said last year, I was worried about the people that were here in New York and the people on my street that weren't sending their kids. But the other thing is some towns are still allowing remote. So we could still have people here that are here, but are still registered in another district. So if you look at the number of sales we've had in Torrington, are we accurate in how many we have in school, or are we still going to get more once the remote ends everywhere? I don't know the answer to that, but.
Yeah. Jason, go ahead.
To Fiona's point, as we're looking at this increased enrollment, we've had a referendum that has passed a certain amount of money for a building. I know you're saying we go to the state, but how do we account for that if in fact the enrollment numbers are going to be higher. I mean, what is the process for that? Is that where the money's kicking in, the state's kicking in money because we have to have a bigger building? I mean, I guess I'm looking for the answer to, if a study does come out and saying we're going to have more students over the next 10 to 15 years, how do we account for that with the process that has already taken place and the approved money and all of that?
Yeah, well, the point is, we have an oversized building right now. So we're trying to cut square footage off the building. So if the state says you can add another 50,000 square feet, that's gonna help. That's gonna help us. Because
So the
then-
plans that we have now are for more students than were originally projected, but it could hold a potential increase.
For like nine more students than was originally, and it's actually like 30,000 more in square footage is the ed spec or whatever the specs we just approved last couple weeks ago.
But it was even larger and they cut some, so maybe we can get some back.
Right, so we don't have to trim the size of the building this much, but that would.
Yeah, because they
So
make
our
it
bu-
ready, it's still oversized, and then, you see what I'm saying? So that,
So our budgeted amount would be able to build a building that is big enough based on what numbers we're currently seeing.
well,
It just wouldn't get reimbursed.
Could we
Yeah.
just see?
Not necessarily, because we don't really know. That's, I think, the
Yeah,
concern.
Okay, so I guess, I mean, asking for a study is one thing, but is it going to end up with anything other than what we already have? Then why waste that money? But I do agree with your saying, Fiona, is we don't want a building that doesn't fit our needs, and whatever we can do, I think is going to be in the best interest of the district.
I mean, I think I'm also looking at it twofold. So the voters approved up to X dollars. We're getting a much larger reimbursement now. I mean, I think it's just important that everybody have the factual information. Like, if we build at this size with this increased enrollment and based on the number of academic rooms, we may be forced to classes of 28 or 30, or having to run classes in other locations that aren't necessarily a classroom, which I don't think anyone wants to do for the opening of a new building.
Is there someone in this, at the city, at the state that we can ask those questions and say, hey, we're seeing this happening, we're seeing that happening, like, what do you recommend? 'Cause
Well,
I
they
know
already
they're
set up a
pretty-
meeting in 2
Yeah.
weeks.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I know they're pretty,
So they would
Yeah.
I felt like they didn't want us to overestimate these numbers, right? They were pretty,
Yeah, they were the
Yeah.
ones who said you're going to do the
Right.
1571.
right?
Yeah,
So we probably
so
need
they
guidance
said
from
it.
me.
Yeah, so we need to bring them into this, but we need to give them our numbers, our current numbers. But I do think it would help to have a NESDEC report, an updated one, so that we can bring it to them.
But if they
In
wouldn't
terms of
consider it at all because the project is too far along, then probably, like, I guess, I want to know first that they'll be willing to consider it if we pay for one, you know?
Well, but we do want to know today, if it's going to be critical, that we don't run into a problem 5 years down the road. We can avoid that in some
Right.
ways, how we fixture it today.
because the other option is that we can build an oversized building, take the hit from the state where they're not gonna reimburse this section, and just pay a little more out of our pocket if we think that it's gonna be a significant increase in enrollment.
Because it'll be cheaper than putting an addition.
Right,
But
Right.
the point is, it wouldn't be reimbursed.
right. But the point is, we could say, okay, let's say they said 300,000, well, we want 310,000 as a number, right? So then we will be liable for the full 10,000 square feet, right? So then, because our projections are, we're gonna increase, and we're gonna bust out that 300,000 square feet in 7 years, let's say, or 8 years after the building, right? So, it would be worth our money to do it now than later.
Sure.
Both sides of the
Absolutely.
building, correct? You'd have to do it to the
Right,
middle and the high school.
yes.
I think part of it, like what keeps me up at night, is so where you could put more academic rooms is adding additional floors, which adding additional floors with kids in the building is never gonna work. So it's not like you can put, there's no more room on the site.
Right, exactly.
Maybe in the back.
Maybe in the back, but
Or you go after.
Right.
using the state and having all of our,
Right.
you know,
All the
facts
numbers.
and numbers and amenable to something.
And I think it's a bifurcated process, right? If the state says no, but the people in our town feel strongly that this isn't sized appropriately, then I think the next process is, do we want to resize it, understanding that that portion of the state reimbursement?
We're gonna do it now.
I mean, we could resize it upwards until we get down to a reimbursement rate that the state initially promised and still be where we promised the taxpayer. would
Right.
be. That's the important thing to remember. The state reimbursement rate went up compared to what we originally believed it would be. So we do have that wiggle room, you know, where people voted in favor of the referendum under the impression that this would be the amount the local taxpayer paid. We have the wiggle room to upsize until we reach that amount without anybody feeling like we lied to them.
But that's with the state approval.
But that's what the facts that we have.
No, of course,
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just, you know, now that the reimbursement rate has gone up, we do have that wiggle room to upsize the building if we need to without, you know, telling the taxpayer, actually, it's gonna cost you way more than we.
Right. The other concern I had, and you may know the answer better, but I don't think that we would get any reimbursement if we had to put an addition on for that 20-year period of time. So we would be 100% on our own.
Yeah, right.
It has to be at least
Exactly.
20 years.
Yeah.
Any
So-
state
We'd rather
project.
you build
Yeah.
it.
And we'll talk about this more, obviously, in building committee, but
Yeah.
we're gonna have to lock something in very soon. Otherwise, we're just gonna be going on year after year after year and never having shovels in the ground. So we're never gonna build this building if we're gonna keep.
Right. So that's what, so
Yeah.
just from my
Yeah.
point, because we're not getting to it, is I think it's important for us to have a new enrollment report, even if the state's not going to reimburse us, so that we're all going into this with
So
our
we
eyes
know.
wide open
Right.
of what we're getting, how many people we're looking at.
Yeah, because right now we're at 1671 for 7 through 12.
Right.
Which is almost 100 students more than what is currently in the plan.
Exactly. And without these two large projects, I mean, it's,
But how do you account for, because I know part of the premise of the school, right, was to try and keep more students in Torrington, not going to other. So how do you account, how is that accounted for in the net, you know, in the
you
net?
can't
It's
with
not,
the
it's
state.
not.
You can't
Right.
with the state.
Because
Yeah.
we said
Yeah.
that, and they still said 1571.
Yeah.
Given the trends.
So,
But that whole trend changed.
Correct, and
Well, we
that,
changed a lot.
that was the unexpected, right? So, yes.
Any other
Tons of
questions?
land on the other side of the town that's all open space that people could be building into.
It's gonna be a solar array, so
Yeah.
that's another issue. It's almost all gone.
That'd be fun.
Any other questions?
it's all just to think about information. So I think we should straw poll if people are interested in getting an updated report or not.
Well, I think we are.
As long as the state would
I think we
consider,
want to hear from
Yeah.
the state.
otherwise it doesn't matter.
Oh, so to me, it does.
No, it does.
Well, it does because then, because we
Because it-
can say, you know, it's worth it to,
But then I would rather budget to pay for it next year in the regular budget. Like, if it's needed immediately to convince the state, you know, let us build a bigger building, I'd say let's do it immediately.
Well, yeah.
Otherwise,
Pretty-
just budget for it for next
No,
year
it's
because it's
pretty-
not gonna be pressed.
We
pretty
can't, it would
immediate.
need to be
It has
part
be
of the
done right
building.
now.
The architects are
started.
designing, we're gonna be breaking ground.
Yeah.
In June.
Right, okay, I think you're misunderstanding what I want. I don't want them to go to this meeting in 2 weeks and ask them, I want somebody to telephone someone at the state tomorrow and ask them, hey, can you figure out the
Oh, yeah.
answer to this question?
You have to deal with the top person who you meet with the whole time.
Yeah, it's
He makes the
very,
decisions.
you have to make the appointment a month in advance. So it's very, they won't just give you that kind of information over the phone.
What's the expense, like what are we talking for a study?
The original one was, well, the original one we got free because we did it with our superintendent search, and then I think it was,
I don't know.
That
It's
sounds
been
familiar.
different
10,000.
amounts.
or it would have been 10,000, but we got it free.
47, yeah.
Pardon?
No, I mean 4,700,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, not
Sorry.
47, no.
Yeah.
I understand. I don't think it would be more than
Yeah, I guess if the only option is to gamble on it, yeah, let's do it.
See, I don't look at it as a gamble. I just look at it as us getting the appropriate information to be
Right.
able to have options for decisions and notify people of what those options are.
Yeah.
And we do have better census information. They just released
Yeah.
last.
Yes.
census information. That might be.
Yeah.
But it'll affect what kind of fixtures they buy. But
Yeah.
then that's in a month or two, that they're
We gotta start
bidding on all
ordering
the
this stuff.
furniture, fixtures, and equipment. and the type
Sure,
they buy.
man. I mean, I don't know that I agree with that, but I'm fine with doing the study. I don't think this is the tsunami that everyone else thinks. I think that it's gonna show that these two projects might add like 50 students at the absolute high end. I'm fine with doing it. I just don't think it's gonna be the crisis that all the NIMBYs are making.
Well, it's not just that, it's also all the people that have bought the home turnover.
That's what I'm, that's. more-
So we know some have come back. Are they all in the schools? Are some still distance learning elsewhere?
Right.
I
What
don't
does
think
that
that
trend
was
look like?
reflected. I mean, what are they gonna do? Are they gonna call everybody who bought these houses and ask them, hey, are your kids still attending Bristol remotely? They're not gonna do that. That's not gonna show. There's no way for them to
No, but
estimate
what they
that.
can, they can know
They
if they
can't
have
address that.
kids.
There's no baseline data.
They can-
Well, right, they'd be lying. They'd be making it up and then regressing it to a mean that doesn't
But
exist.
this is the real estate cycle that may end up being like the 80s, where we built in Torrington 500 houses, we built 400 houses over a decade and a half. And then it stopped.
Yep.
Right now, Torrington's values are still low. I mean, some of the kids we mentor right now, and not New York, it's Waterbury, Danbury, and other towns, like Narrative, they're coming up here because homes are, the parents can afford a house in Torrington.
Yep.
And they're selling in Danbury for, let's say, $350 today, which was $250 last year. And $350 today, in Torrington gets twice the house in Danbury. And it's all ethnicities. I mean, like we're going, I mean, drive around the north end or the west end today. Today on the north end, I drove around doing the sidewalks over. There's 9 houses being renovated, 2 families being renovated. I mean, these are old, run-down 2 families. You know, you're running it, you're finding them. You're finding them apartments.
Well, that's the other thing is I don't think a lot of these, especially single family homes, are being purchased by like young families. I would guess that the Torrington's market is similar to everywhere else in the country where they're being bought by landlords and speculators.
So, and I guess that's my question. I don't
Not the
want to guess.
Ecuadorians.
I want to
No,
know.
I just think enrollment is going up, but I don't think it's going to show a spike. And I certainly don't think a study is gonna estimate a spike. I mean, I guess I'm just saying I wouldn't be as worried about it as everyone seems to be. I think it's gonna work out.
Guess we'll find out,
Go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah.
right?
In my neighborhood, it's a single family home, it's a lot like, there's multiple generations, grandparents, parents.
Sure. Which is fine. I don't think this
Kids
is a
in school age
disaster.
kids.
Landlord buys a house, rented.
But right now we
Figure it
can't
out.
rent student kids to job.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, you could fit them in there.
You could, yeah, I mean, it's just not what this is built on. But I just have one more question for Molly on that. So is the NASDAQ
We
the
keep it track.
only
No,
study we would do? Because I think
there's
when we sat,
there's other companies that do it. That's like the one we do.
we just
Yeah.
weren't happy with the results, if I remember, because of that multifamily,
It's an understatement.
right?
Yeah.
That was like one of my
We
first
also
meetings.
instructed that guy
All the
to
magnet
look
schools.
at permanent people that pulled to construct new housing units. I specifically remember telling him to do that, and everyone agreeing.
Yeah.
No, we never got a follow.
Is there
Yeah.
other people other than NESDEC that provide that kind of service?
There are, but most everyone uses NASDAQ. You can look,
Or we can be extremely specific in what we want.
in the last 3 districts I've worked at for NASDAQ every time,
Good idea.
because they have,
It was an academic
Bigger
center,
data
CCSU, that studies municipal government.
And I guess for them, it might be cheaper because they would only be updating it versus starting from the beginning again.
I just want to make sure, because I remember us kind of like brushing off the data, that if we are going to spend the money, go through the whole process
You
again,
got it,
that
you
it's
had it.
valuable data that we can actually.
we just had that last year, right?
Yeah, so they should just be bringing
Yeah,
it
they'll be
forward.
building it. Building on it.
I think we're all in agreement. Okay. All set? All right. LEAP funding.
So LEAP funding, just to clarify for you, is actually under the auspices of Ed Advance, but they are providing programs for us, which have been very helpful. Do you want to just talk a little bit about LEAP?
So LEAP is an acronym that stands for Learner Engagement and Attendance Program. So Torrington is one of 15 districts in the state of Connecticut who were identified to receive LEAP funding. We are getting somewhere in the neighborhood of like $280,000 change. The focus of the program is to train staff members in the district to become home visitors. And we've done that training. We've done it a couple of times over the summer. And we have actually started, I think I've shared this with you in the past, there was a lot of the home visiting outreach that was done prior to summer school. So it actually started in late June, early July, continued throughout the summer and into this school year. We've prioritized our chronically disengaged and truant students. For this, we have about, I think we're up in 60 some odd home visiting trained staff members who are doing this work. So that's really the crux of the whole program, is to re-engage children and families who, because of COVID, have kind of fallen off the grid.
Yeah, so it's just the purpose to bring it here tonight is it's money that gets funneled to Ed Advance. We get to run the programs. We are doing everything we need to do. It's actually a lot of paperwork.
Yes.
Because it was from the Fed to the state to now us, and just making sure that we document these home visits and the supports for those students who have been disengaged, as Sue was saying. So we don't have to worry about it. Lynn doesn't have to keep track of that. Sue has to keep track of it in terms of just the home visiting. So it's more of a paperwork issue.
Yeah, there's a lot of,
Than a
a
budgetary.
lot of red tape, honestly. Every single phone call, every single form of outreach then requires, documentation on a special form that's electronic, that goes back to, I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of meetings. Yeah.
But just so that you understand, we are getting the services, just don't have the funding here per se, so.
Yes, it's really very worthwhile. Yep.
So just as an add-on to that, so because we're all in person now, though, our attendance and truancy policies all come back into play this year. So it's not, we're not going to run into as issues of last year.
Yeah, and we have our attendance review boards at each school, and they have their whole teams that are working on this, and more people who are trained now, so.
Right. And the state is looking at attendance very closely this year,
Right.
very closely. There's reporting that needs to go out. I forgot how often, Howard School reporting out to the state every so often now. They're looking at it very closely this year.
Yeah, and then we also have the Alliance review where we've got to give those attendance numbers as well.
And the LEAP 2 is really, it was intended to be a proactive measure to re-engage folks, and really the end game is to, when working with families, to design a student support plan
Right.
so that we can successfully re-engage long-term.
I think it would be helpful to remind parents of that at the parent night in September, that, it's not like
Attendance.
last year that we're back to normal
They'll
and
have to show up.
you have to do your no unexcused absences and stuff, so that people can't say they didn't know.
Any other questions on that? Alliance funding update for.
So the Alliance, want to give the good news about the money increase?
They increased it to $3,920,000 for this year. It was around 3 million last year, 2.9.
About 900,000.
Yeah, so that's something that they work very hard to put where it's needed.
And so I know we've been concerned in terms of staffing. A lot of this is really making sure that we've got systems in place. So professional development and curriculum writing, where Lynn's gonna be presenting an educational finance system possibly. Throughout this money, she's been able to pay for this through Alliance in East Haven as well. It's just an easier system for parents to understand, for boards to work with. You still have New World and all of that with the city. This is just a system that will help us with charts and graphs and things like that. And Ally's gonna help us. So we'll do a whole presentation on that another evening. But this is just to give you a sense of where some of the other funding, the 900,000 would be allocated through supplies for Performance Matters is our data system. Educators Rising is to help support our students who want to go into education with internships and apprenticeships. Panorama is to help us with surveys, with disaggregation charts. It's a better, easier system. We were using SurveyMonkey, which is kind of the lowest of the low. And we really have sent out so many surveys, which we will continue to do in this next year. It just makes a better, more robust system. We were very lucky. John got some whiteboards for us, so we'd really like to be able to have smartboard projectors to go with those whiteboards. And certainly there's an installation cost to that. Transportation for extended day is quite expensive because we want to run what we had last year. And so we're talking about all our different schools. We're talking about extended day for all our different grade levels. And really, especially at the secondary level, we don't want to miss a beat and have them start up in September, and then our younger students starting their extended day in October. We need extended day funds, obviously, for teachers and for tutors to continue that learning. And then I missed at the top, two security paras for the high school. We have 4 security paras now at the middle school. It would be really nice to have the 2 security paras added to the high school. High schools run on just 2 for many, many years. I can't even remember when they've had more security paras. But just in terms of that building is large, you've got 2 separate sections, just hallways, bathrooms, cafeteria, dismissal, those pieces, even arrival of students, and they're in a variety of different areas so that they can still get their breakfast and kind of get settled for the day. It really would help to have that extra personnel there. It certainly has been a help at the middle school, so.
So where does the
Hold on,
additions
Gary
come?
had his hand up before, and then Nick, okay?
It's too easy if you know these things that are all off. These schedules. Just, we've talked about meetings in the past with the Board of Finance about Alliance funding and how eventually we want to get off the land. Is there any way to model? When you were in East Haven, did you ever model how you get off Alliance funding? Is there a, and I'm not saying it's going to take 6 weeks, it may take 3 years, but do you think that it's possible to do that? And maybe it's not, I don't know. The more they give us, the harder it's going to be.
Take a very large hit. The town would end up picking up all of those positions that are currently funded by it.
But we know eventually we're going to be off, so how do we prepare? Is there a way financially to prepare for it? What I'm saying.
Yes, you would have to start bringing the salary portions back to the board's budget, because those are the ones that reoccur forever.
Is East Haven still on Alliance?
Yes.
They're in the same
Yeah,
position.
they've been for many years.
Many
They've been for
years.
Maybe.
2015, they started as an alliance district.
We talk about it every year. How do we figure out how we get off?
It's not easy to do. You have to just start to take and absorb the positions that you created with Alliance to get the educational benefits that the literacy coaches and math coaches.
And that's really
It's
was the
not,
biggest discussion.
that's a tough nut to crack.
Just curious.
And we're going to continue to look at return on investment for
No,
these
of course.
positions,
I
obviously.
was just thinking.
And
you
we'll
stated
report out.
that if you further on.
I was just curious which ones were incremental, you know, accounting for that additional 900,000. Is it starting with that PD and curriculum writing?
Yeah, so really what's toward the end, you'll see,
Yeah.
and some of them we've had for a long time, like the marketing magazine, we've had
I guess I was
the
trying to see
reading
what you
materials.
added.
Right, so the ones that I mentioned. So
Security paras.
the security paras, the curriculum and PD, the educational finance system. I believe that Performance Matter was on there previously.
Yes, it was last year.
So, but then educators rising.
That's new.
Okay. And then the rest all the way down. Yep. So then we do, no, that's the same.
This?
Yeah, we just changed, people.
Oh,
in
okay.
terms of-
Jason? Jason, go ahead.
Yep. Sorry, I was unmuting. The social media coordinator positions, there's the 3 different lines. The 1,500 times 6, that's for each of the building ones. And then the top 2, is that for the 2, is there 2 coordinators district-wide?
We do have 2 coordinators district-wide. Yep.
And so I know that I just got the contract for the middle school. Was there an increase in the stipend? Because that doesn't match what the contract said.
I believe it's 1,500, but I'll defer to Kim.
It was the coordinator stipend from the teacher's contract, so 1377 was,
Okay, because it says 1,500 on the sheet.
right, yeah, that's what I'm saying, I coordinator stipend in the teacher's contract is 1377, so.
Right,
That's-
that's what okay, that's what I was just
Correct
asking.
it, Jason, thank you.
Yep, it's a savings. I don't, it can go elsewhere. It's
That's
not,
what your contract said, Jason, right?
no, yes, it is. And
Okay.
that's, yes, it is. And that's why there's a little bit of savings there that can go towards something else.
Thank you.
The transportation and the extended day, that's in addition to what we've allocated from the ESSER funds. I forget how much it was, but it was north of $1 million. So like we use some of the ESSER funds.
Yeah, for transportation, but that wasn't $1 million for transportation.
No,
In the
maybe not,
budget,
but for
in
all.
GB, sure,
Yeah, okay.
transportation. Yeah, but that's how much it costs to do transportation on a daily basis. So this is after-school programming.
So I think my question was just, we allocated a significant chunk of the ESSER funds to this extended day program.
Sure, because.
And this is now in addition because we're adding, or it's becoming more expensive, or?
So remember, we ran summer programs. So that was, we had to pay through ESSER funds because Alliance will be done in June. So now we have to have more money for transportation because we have extended day. So the ESSER funds for last year, we ran extended day from March all the way till June. Then we ran summer school all the way from June to late in August especially for the high school. So we needed a lot of, transportation is expensive. So we needed to allot that out of the ESSER funds. But now we have this money for the extended day.
We're gonna run it again this fall.
With as many offerings as we had last year. With as many opportunities for extended day,
I just
K through 12.
probably asked this meeting at the big meeting, at the board meeting, just because I want to go back to my sheet on it, just because I thought we've already allocated money for extended day continuously of the program.
And I think it's confusing because ESSER lasts for a longer period of time. And so that was okay to use for summer transportation, whereas Alliance is done in June. So then we just have to make sure that we have, that the Alliance is more finite. ESSER was more broad and covered a broader period of time. And we could use that right away. Whereas we had already established the Alliance budget for last year. So we couldn't say, oh, now we want to change our mind and put it into transportation. But some of those costs for transportation and program did overlap with Alliance. So, we could go back and look at the ESSER and what we spent, and if you want to do a comparison.
And the ESSER's gonna keep going next year for the
Right.
extended day and into the following year. So that $1 million is for 3 years.
Yeah, that's why I thought we had already covered.
So I have a question. Would there be any possible way we could add a stipend in here for extracurricular activities? So I'm not picking on high school athletics, but you don't know when the games are, you don't know, necessarily all the time who the coaches are, because things change. But more so for the schedules. So even like as a parent, you have to go there to max preps, but you have to know that that's what you have to do. And it kind of seems like if we're trying to get the community more engaged in the high school, that we would want someone promoting all of those public events that the band does, football, basketball. The band is at the Mums Parade this weekend or whatever it is, but just to get the community more involved in what's going on a weekly basis, right?
Yeah.
So,
Social media,
for social media, so they, like an influencer, like
right.
home football game Friday night, and they could post it to sites so that people are aware of what's going on, because, and I'm not blaming anyone, it's just, I think it's nobody's really job to do that, so.
But that would be the
Where-
social media
where-
coordinator.
Puts out the weekly sports schedule of all the games, the AD. The weekly, all the games, the level, varsity, JV, whatever, who they're playing and where it is.
Where does he
Who does
post
that go to then?
Well, he sends it out in email to us, but that goes out to public too, out to parents and stuff like that.
I mean, the problem with that is that can change.
What's that?
Midweek, that can change though, too.
Yeah, and
That's the
he sends out
difficult
all the
thing.
changes. So like if it changes, like it sends it out on Monday, it changes on Wednesday, and then update schedule.
He said the ADA.
Why wouldn't that be the
And I
role
think
of the,
it's
They may have a-
either the district-wide social media coordinators or the actual schools?
The building one.
Like, why wouldn't that be, I see that as rolled into that social media for
Correct.
the individual schools
is.
and or the district-wide.
I just think there's so much activity with all of that stuff. It's not, we have so many teams running. We've got band, we have theater, we have a lot of.
It would be nice to have one
We need
place.
a centralized calendar, and we've talked about that for a long time, and I think then we can post
See, and I
that.
think I'm even
Wouldn't that
looking
be
at it as more
GPS
than
then?
that, though. Is it going to our page and then having somebody posting it to other like community pages so that it's constant?
They don't tweet it out.
There's more,
My experience
Certain
always
schools are
been you
more
have to
active, I
know
think.
what you're supposed to do to be able to find it. And I just don't think we should make it that hard for people to know what's going on. It's just,
well, why wouldn't that be the district? One of the district positions, like I can understand if you want to pull it out from,
well, because I think like, somebody would have to be in contact with those people, like to know that, especially now, Naugatuck game got canceled because they're on quarantine for COVID. So
Right.
whoever's putting it out has
Right.
to also be pulling it all
It
back.
would be more effort.
And just focusing in on
Focusing
that
on a
and not so
specific
many
area.
different
Right.
things.
Because I think all you're
Right.
getting is,
Right, because it's hard enough just to keep the websites up and the changing
right,
information
because they're doing
there
all the
and
website
albeit-
information, all the staffing
yeah,
on the
right, the
website.
pictures,
Ultimately, you want something posted, right? If I'm a coach and I want something posted by the student on social media, it's my responsibility as the director of the activity to tell the social media people, here, post this. Like ultimately, to me, I think he's right. It would be the social media coordinator's responsibility to post it out there if it's given to them. I don't think it's fair.
But then there's multiple layers. Not all of the people are actually employees that coach sports. So you're not an employee of the district. You might not even know who the social media
Right,
person
But
is.
you're not requiring them, right? You're saying to these people, hey, yeah. Sorry, I'll stop you.
So I think I can help this a little bit. Sarah Coolidge and I were actually talking earlier today, just kind of thinking about our website and some of the social media and the issues that come with it, because you end up posting something in 5 different places.
Mhm.
And we are looking into overhauling our website into something way more dynamic. And with that dynamic content that we can create automatically comes to postings. So depending on what posting, depending what page, it'll go out to our social media platform feeds. So that essentially it becomes a one click kind of stuff for everything. So I'm sure Sarah and I can develop a workflow where people feed us information and we'll be able to accurately and automatically update everything that comes in. It's something that's definitely on our radar, and it'll happen soon. So we've been definitely, thinking about that to make it much easier for people to find information, not just on the website, but also through social media. But have both of them always synchronized so that everything is the same.
How much will your stipend be? I'm just kidding.
So I'm on the high school website right now, and right on the bottom, there's like quick links or whatever, and the first one is athletics, and when you click on it, there's a calendar that has all of the athletic events on
I
it.
think
So
we're talking
somebody's
about
filling
central.
this. I mean, somebody's doing something with this.
Right.
It's just a matter of getting that information to, and that's just athletics. I know it's not the only one, but somehow this information is getting onto this
Doesn't each
calendar
one have its own master calendar?
for the
Yes,
individual,
they do.
through the CIAC website. But you have to go in there and it's like a 6-step process to get the thing, and people who know, but if you're just like a regular person in Torrington, who wants to watch
If we
TV,
want to
you
put
would
on the
never think to do
agenda for
that.
another time, you can do that, because now we're.
Yeah, because this is just the
Trying to solve
initial
the
draft,
issue.
just to let you know, we're getting more
Solve the
money, this is what we're starting to think about, just as an overview, that's all. We'll keep fine tuning it.
Correct. Yeah, I don't know. I just think
Alliance,
No.
monthly financials,
no, nor do the coaches.
enrollment,
Whoever does the socials for the school should at every building, because every building is different things.
anything else for future meetings that you can think of? Lynn, or,
Not right now.
no, monthly financials, enrollment and alliance. And we're all set with year-end 2021, right?
It's not completely closed, but we're getting
Okay.
there.
So we'll have to visit that again, right?
Yes. And hopefully we'll have year-end for you.
21. Okay, nothing else? Anybody have anything else? Okay. Comments for good in the order? Go my left. Good.
Any thanks, Lynn? Yeah, we're liking all these charts and graphs,
Yes, good. Good
information,
Loving the
and
charts, loving.
good explanation. Thank you, thank you.
Budget time. Make it even prettier.
Lynn, anything? So, Kim,
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Jason,
Great start to the year, and looking forward to a productive one.
Ally,
I'm good, thanks.
John.
Good.
Anecdotally, just take a second. I met a young boy, just graduated from high school, who came from Waterbury. And we talked, just because it was serendipitous, but we started talking about what did he like the high school. And he told me how wonderful it was to be a minority, coming from Waterbury, having gone to high school in Waterbury where he was above average student, but really never really did anything because they expected nothing of him. He got here, the community welcomed him, his family, and Robin in particular, did everything she could to make sure this boy got through. He got here in the beginning of COVID, through a real tough transition. And he said the high school welcomed him and his brother, and his brother's getting support. He's not as good a student, just wonderful.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice success story, beautiful.
No.
Thank you, everybody. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
I-